Evening everyone, and welcome to our latest video. Now, for people that have been following recently, you would know that over this coming few weeks I'm focusing particularly on university finance and all the things that go with that, because it's a really busy and important time in people's lives, especially if you're a younger person or the parent or close family member of a younger person who is getting ready to go to university in the coming weeks and months. I think they start in about 6-7 weeks time. So really important to make sure that we're getting off on the right foot, because let's be honest, the decisions that you make or your young person makes today with respect to their personal finances are going to have really long lasting knock-on impacts and consequences, and that means we've got to make sure that we're starting off making the right decisions based on good quality information. So in this 3-part series, the article for part 1 is already out, and this is the accompanying video. I'm going to talk today about student debt in broader terms and the tuition fee system, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around that, and a lot of people either make decisions to not go to university, usually based on incorrect information around tuition fees, or they just misunderstand how the debt functions, and again that has really quite significant consequences for both their mental well-being but also their financial planning. A few caveats: I am out and about and live again tonight, and that means that anything could happen. I'm in a relatively quiet place, but hey, that people, dogs, cows, you name it, they'll turn up whenever we go live. They just know it. So for those of you that are following on different platforms, we tend to do these videos live on X first of all, before then putting them out onto our other platforms over the coming days, and most notably Facebook and YouTube. But hey, let's dive in. So first of all, I think back to when I was a young person and I chose not to go to university at the time. I was the first year group that had the then higher rate of tuition fees, and one of the reasons that I chose not to do that was because, quite frankly, I had misunderstood how the student finance and tuition fee system worked. And so at the time, the old fees were £3,000. We were the first year to get them at £9,000. And I remember thinking, I can't afford that. Okay, I know I can borrow it, but that's going to lock me into years and years of debt, and I don't want to do it. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't go. First of all, let's debunk one thing. You as a student, irrespective of where you study in the UK, do not have to come up with the money for your courses in advance. Irrespective of whether you live in England, Scotland, or another part of the UK, there are organisations that are set up and supported by the government to do that for you. So in England and Wales, it's typically something called the Student Loans Company. In Scotland, it's an organisation called SAS, SAAS. And when you go through the correct administrative process, they, on your behalf, pay the course fee to your course provider. You don't have to touch the money, you never see it. It goes directly from them to them by the loan provider on your behalf. Never see it. Now, if you're resident in Scotland, as I know a lot of people are that follow particularly my Facebook channels, typically if you're a full-time student in Scotland, you do not have to pay a tuition fee towards your course. Pardon me, that is covered by a completely separate funding arrangement, and there's no requirement for you to take out debt in the name of tuition if you are ordinarily resident in Scotland and you're studying there. You can also get help if you are, again, resident in Scotland but choosing to study in another part of the UK, and likewise if you are from another part of the UK coming to study in Scotland. The arrangement for those groups of people differ, so make sure you do your research and you understand exactly what the course fee structure is and what you will and will not get. That's part number 1. You don't have to pay it up front. Part number 2 then, that is, well, what happens when I finish my course, and what about all this debt? Because that's the thing that people get really bothered about. First of all, your student debt is typically comprised of 2 parts. First one, tuition. Most people have to pay that, although qualifying residents in Scotland don't have to pay tuition fee debt. And the second one is your living loans. They're the loans that are paid rather than from the loan company to the university. They're paid to you to support you through the general cost of living while you're at university. Now, I'm going to cover those in part 2 of this 3-part series, so we're going to leave that to one side for now, and I'm just going to talk about the debt in the broader sense, okay? So whatever it is that's gone into your particular pot, you end up with a figure, and that figure comprises, or equates to rather, your student debt. Now, the most important thing then that people perhaps misunderstand with respect to student or tuition debt is that it doesn't function like a typical debt would. So, for example, a mortgage or a car finance or a typical loan. They don't operate in the same way. The way to think about student loan repayments is that it functions more like a tax. So, if I was to get a loan out, for example, the amount that I've borrowed would be fixed, the interest rate would be fixed, and the amount of time and therefore how much money I would pay each month would be fixed. Doesn't work like that. The student loan repayment systems, irrespective of where you are in the UK, and I'll unpack that a little bit more in a moment, is determined, or the amount that is repaid rather, is determined entirely by your income. Like income tax, there is a threshold for student loan repayments. So I'm going to use the English number for the most recent type of student loans, which is what's called a Plan 5 student loan. Now, the repayment threshold for a Band 5 student loan, and check this because I'm doing it from memory, it's £25,000 a year. So you go and you do your study, you borrow whatever you need to borrow, and it doesn't matter whether you come out with a debt of £40,000 or £400,000, you do not repay a single penny ever if you earn under £25,000 a year. Period. Now, when you start to earn over £25,000 a year, that's when the student loan repayment structure kicks in, and you will pay a percentage of your income above the £25,000. Okay, and that figure is 9%. So if you earn £5,000 above the repayment figure, so let's say you earn £30,000 a year, you would expect to pay, you tested me for some mental maths now, over the course of a year, about £450 from your pay towards the cost of the student loan. Now, each student loan plan, depending on whether you're in England, Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland, the plan numbers, that's how we differentiate them, the principle is the same. And the principle is there is an earnings threshold by which you have to earn over. When you're over the threshold, you pay 9% if it's an undergraduate loan. Postgraduates is a separate thing, and we'll talk about that another day, but this is aimed at people that are going to university for the first time. So your undergraduate loan, 9% above the earnings threshold, and they are all written off after a certain period of time. Now, that time frame ranges from 25 years to 40 years, and it depends on the individual plan that your loan is on. But what that means is, hypothetically speaking, you could go to university, you could borrow tens of thousands of pounds of student loans over the course of that time, go through almost your entire working life and earn under the threshold your entire working life, and you'll never be asked to repay a penny. No one haggles you, no one chases you, no one sends you aggressive letters to the door, bailiffs don't turn up. There is no obligation on you to repay a single penny of that student loan if you earn under the threshold relative to your particular plan. When you do creep over it, you pay it back at the 9% rate. And of course, that means for the vast majority of people, they never ever repay the full amount that they borrowed. That's just how it works. It functions like a tax for a set period of time, and that write-off is almost like the safety clause that means you're not going to be indefinitely chased by the student loans provider forever to repay back that money. And the way that, yes, there is interest on the loans, and I'm not going to go into the interest too much today because this is more about setting you up for going to university. Clearly, some people pay more than others over the course of their working life, but it is broadly accepted that the vast majority of people, especially with the numbers being as they are, do not repay the student loans in full. So what that means, first of all, no one is going to ask you for any money up front for your course. Your accommodation and your living costs are different, but the big headline numbers that always get floated around in the papers, and where the majority of that debt comes from, especially if you're in England or other parts of the UK that your courses are charged for, is the tuition fee. No one is going to ask you to pay that money up front it comes through the student loans company, SAS, or whoever it is that's providing your tuition funding. You borrow what you need to borrow. At the end of university, you come out with the total amount that is owed. Don't lose sleep over how much it is, okay? Ideally, no one wants to borrow anything. Reality, some people have to borrow more than others because everyone's situation is different. Everyone's entitled to different amounts of funding. Again, when it comes to the living loans funding that I'm going to talk about in part 2, it'll make a bit more sense. But you're going to come out with a figure, and that's the figure that you owe. You can go through your working life and never earn enough to repay it, but when you do start to earn over that amount of money that meets the threshold, you pay back at a rate of 9% until either the loan is paid off or the wipe clause kicks in at whatever point in time that is, respective to your personal loan plan. So that is, in broader terms, how the tuition funding works. One key takeaway I would say to you, and this isn't for people that have decided that they're going to go to university, this is a general observation aimed at people that are perhaps thinking about it next year or the year after, and you're weighing up whether or not it's for you. What I would say, guys, is, although you don't have to pay any money up front, let's be honest, think about the numbers that are at play here. £25,000 is the current threshold for a Plan 5 loan. If you go out to work and earn slightly over the minimum wage on a full-time basis, you're probably there or thereabouts earning in and around the cut-off for the Plan 5 loan repayments to kick in. The days of going to university for a few more years to kick life down the road and figure it out are just not a thing anymore. You need to make a conscious decision to go to university because there are real tangible benefits at the end. If you don't do that and you go just because you're kind of getting on that bandwagon and end up doing a job that doesn't require a degree, there's a very real possibility that you're going to have to repay that money for a long period of time. And actually, on reflection, it's money that you'd have been better off not borrowing. The vast majority of graduates, of course, it doesn't work like that. You do go on to earn slightly more, even if the job market is a little bit more competitive than what it has been in previous years. Main thing, go into it with your eyes open. Don't panic about paying for your courses up front, and understand how your repayment structures will work when you get out the other end. I hope that unpacks the tuition fee element of it for you in a bit more detail. Part 2, again, we're going to focus on making sure that you understand the living loan, and that's what really bites people, because no one asks you for that money for the tuition or for the course. That is what is paid, like I've said before, from the loan provider to the university. You need to live while you're there, and therefore you need to understand how to expect how much money you're going to receive from the living loans, for example, and therefore you can budget accordingly. Everyone gets a slightly different amount, and I'll unpack that more in part 2. Part 3, we're going to look a little bit more in the intricacies of ways to budget as a student, so that, again, whether it's you or whether it's your son or daughter that's going to university, you can go into it with your eyes open, make good decisions, and support your loved ones while you're there. I really hope you found this useful. It's such an important topic, and it's critical to get it right. If you would, please like, follow, subscribe, depending on where it is that you're watching this particular video, so that I can make sure that I'm making the best possible content to help you and your family make the great financial decisions that I know you can. That's all for tonight. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.